Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome. Are you a lost wanderer? Tired of a long journey? Then join me. Sit beside the fireplace and let me tell you some stories that may soothe your mood as you regain your strength. Are you all set? Good. Have you ever wondered how a noble lives their life? Sounds dreamy, right? With all the available resources in front of you, living a luxurious life would probably be the only thing you would do. But not for the family of du Couteau. There's a reason why a family holds a prestige position, and of course, their kin will be the successor in order to maintain their grasp as a noble. Now that the premise has been set, here's the story of Cassiopeia du Couteau, the Serpent's embrace. As we all know, Noxious is a powerful empire with a fearsome reputation. To those beyond its borders, Noxious is brutal, expansionist, and threatening. Yet those who look beyond its warlike exterior see an unusually inclusive society, where the strengths and talents of its people are respected and cultivated. The societies in Noxious have different classes, and one that plays a huge role is the nobles. Nobility is a social class normally ranked immediately under royalty, and found in some societies that have a formal aristocracy. They possess more acknowledged privileges and higher social status than most other classes in society. Membership in the nobility has historically been granted by a monarch or government. They can be hereditary or gained by claimed wealth and achievements. These noble houses have existed since the first walls were raised around Noxious and lead lives of privilege as they play a key role in politics. They believed that their proud heritage was the nation's greatest strength, but many hungered for greater influence. Old noble families will wield considerable power at the heart of the empire. One of the known noble houses in Noxious was the du Couteau family, a house that rules one of the largest assassin guilds in Noxious, with historic ties to the Black Rose, a secret organization in Noxious. Du Couteau House was both highly respected but also feared by many. The credit belongs to the head of the family, Marcus du Couteau, an expert assassin, with his wife Soriana du Couteau, a smart tactician. Together, the two build the house, doing whatever it takes to gain political advantage. Soon, Soriana gives birth to two daughters named Cassiopeia and Caterina, and the family also adopted a young boy named Talon, further expanding their family as they aim to raise them to be the perfect du Couteau. Born as a noble in Noxious, Cassiopeia du Couteau had a sharp mind and wit at an early age. During their early childhood, the du Couteau family moved to Erzeris, a coastal city of northern Shurima, but currently occupied by Noxious. As planned, the two sisters were meant to undergo different training, while there was no news about their adopted brother. While her older sister Caterina trained under their father Marcus to be an assassin, Cassiopeia was taught by her mother Soriana how to use a position of authority. The reason why they were chosen for a specific field was still unknown, but it was clear that the du Couteau family wanted to ensure their kin could do both of their work, following the footsteps they paved. This setup somewhat lessens the chance for Cassio and Cata to interact. Their parents were trying to remove the innocence in them at an early age, turning the sisters into ruthless persons aligned with the family house. Instead of playing around like a normal child, Cata undergoes physical training, while Cassio is more focused on studying and the political aspect of Noxious. Still, both of them received minimal experience with the counterpart of their field, but the given task to them was the one they should master. One day, Soriana fell ill as a result of an assassination attempt by poisoning her hairbrush. No one knew who did such a sneaky tactic, which led them to fire every staff while the family tried to investigate the case. With Marcus removing the house staff, Cassiopeia tended to her mother. They were currently underhanded, and nobles usually relied on their servants, but Cassio took the responsibility of taking care of her mother, despite her mind getting corrupted at a young age. It was a bit challenging for Cassio, but the unfortunate moment actually helped them to develop a closer bond as Soriana recovered, not just being a child mentored to be the future villain. When Marcus and Katerina returned to Noxus, Cassiopeia remained in Euxerius with her mother, seemingly growing a connection with her mother, and it looked like Soriana also did for Cassio. Eventually, Soriana told her the truth that she was part of the Black Rose cult, which had managed to influence Shurima. The Black Rose has been a powerful organization in Noxus, able to manipulate even the politics itself, all behind the curtains. As Soriana shared some stories, it inspired Cassio to do the same thing, making her eager to learn her mother's tactics. As Cassiopeia grew to adulthood, she indeed followed her mother's footsteps, now a slim woman who wears only a Shuriman headdress, bra, and armbands on her elbows. Cassio learned that looks also play a role in deceiving someone. Soriana mentored her to be a cunning and manipulative figure who could use those around her as tools before disposing of them when given the chance. With a promising future, Cassiopeia was initiated into the Black Rose by stealthily assassinating those who plotted Soriana's death, taking vengeance on her hands and earning her position in the Black Rose. After gaining her role with the Black Rose's plans, Cassiopeia further proved herself in the organization. When Soriana received the news that her husband honored Jericho Swain's coup against Borum Darkwill, the current ruler of Noxus, she realized that the Black Rose would be in danger. Borum Darkwill has been an ally to the Black Rose, and once his presence was removed, Jericho Swain could demolish the Black Rose. Soriana cannot let this happen, so she instructs Cassiopeia to obtain Shurima's godly power. Swearing to her mother's oath, Cassiopeia set her eyes on the underground tomb of the Forgotten. Cassio did a lot of research first while drafting a plan. She must raid the Shuriman ruins to retrieve a rumored powerful artifact, but of course, she must find someone who is knowledgeable within the first place. The Shuriman ruins hold a lot of mysterious incidents according to the reports, and a lot of the residents of Shurima warn those who desire to seek the ruins. However, those stories do not make Cassio flinch even for a second. She proceeds to the desert of Shurima to execute her plans. In a market at the edge of the Shuriman desert, a stranger appears. Cassiopeia, a noblewoman from Noxus, looking to hire a guide to take her to the fabled lost city. But not just any guide. She hires the owner of a legendary blade, the infamous mercenary called Severe, a beautiful girl of average height, curvaceous and somewhat toned tan skin, long jet black hair that falls down her back, and shiny blue eyes. She wears somewhat revealing black and gray clothing, with black boots, gloves, a bra, a black skirt with golden accents, a white scarf around her neck, and a gold tiara with a turquoise jewel in the center. Severe is a renowned fortune hunter and mercenary captain who plies her trade in the deserts of Shurima. Upholding the motto, "You've got a problem, I've got a price," Severe accepted Cassio's request. Severe then gathered her band of sellswords and set out into the desert to find the very bones of Shurima. It's evident that Severe knows the desert very well, and hiring her was the right move for Cassio. 5 days beneath the broiling sun, a scout spots towers juddering upwards and a stairway leading underground. It looked like the wanderers finally reached their destination. They climbed down into the darkness with extreme precautions in mind. Upon stepping into the ruins, something unexpected welcomed the group. Ancient treasures gleamed in the torchlight. Even Severe is astonished by the grandeur of the ruins. Her men head deeper in, only to stumble into traps and be eviscerated. The ruin is heavily loaded by traps, and Severe is stunned with horror. On the other hand, Cassiopeia does not flinch, since sacrificing someone for their own safety has been the go-to in their family. Cassio sees only the statue of a huge serpent silently guarding the door of the tomb of the emperors, and smiles. Even with the lack of expertise in ruins, Cassio already gathered enough information to know the purpose of the statue. At least, that is what she believes. The ancient weapon is a key, and Cassio wants it for herself. In that moment, she betrays Severe. Cassio picks up Severe's blade and puts it into the lock. Because of that, the Guardian's curse was triggered. The stone serpent comes alive and impales Cassiopeia in its jaws. The venom sears her flesh like acid. While chaos unfolds, the Severe's blade also opens the doors to the tomb, releasing an ancient god warrior of the old Shurima, Renekton, and the ascended Magus, Zereth, both finally free from a millennial imprisonment. It was indeed a chaotic sequence of events, as everyone tried to escape from the reawakened descendants. Meanwhile, Cassio was in deep pain, enduring the venom that runs through her veins. Her greed fired back and bit her, quite literally in this sense. She thought that the poison would kill her, but something else happened to her. The poison inflicted a curse on Cassiopeia, transforming her into a half-human, half-snake hybrid. Her legs turned into a long green snake tail, merged into her body with a golden belt, and her fingers became golden with an adorned jewel on the back of each hand. She has black sclera with glowing lime irises and slitted pupils. She has snake-like fangs in place of teeth and a forked tongue. Cassio's action turned her into a completely different being, something that the world of Runeterra hasn't seen. Eventually, the chaos dissipated as Cassio regained consciousness. Even though she managed to climb back again to the surface, Cassio felt like her original self had already died in the ruins. Cassio traveled through the desert, looking to find a place to hide. She believed that no one could accept her appearance. Even Cassio herself hated her new self. For weeks, Cassio mourned her lost life, dwelling on the decision she had made. But even the river goes dry, and Cassio's tears already die. She began to accept her new form and moved on, hoping her newfound ascended magic to have a potential place for the Black Rose. Cassio returned to Erzeris while lurking in the shadows. Returning as a new being, Cassiopeia reclined against the crenellated rooftop and gazed over the winding alleys and crowded streets of Erzeris. A Noxian possession for years, the coastal city still refused to completely embrace her new identity. It felt ancient and quietly resistant to the future. Untroubled by the cool night air, Cassiopeia wore a shift of translucent silk, which revealed the transition at her hips, where soft skin merged into sinuous, overlapping snake scales. The scent of roasted meat wafted up to her hidden auri, but it could not mask the vile stench of thousands of people living on top of each other. Her mouth burned as noxious venom mingled with her saliva. She flexed her muscular tail, cracking the stonework, and sending crumbled fragments to the streets below. Truly, Cassio has fully embraced her new form, despite what the residents of Erzeris said about her. Rats scattered from the falling stone. Filthy street urchins dashed around street corners as hooded figures whispered in the shadows and burly soldiers staggered in and out of taverns. All were oblivious to the predator lurking in the darkness above. Cassiopeia brushed a taloned hand against her scaly side, her serpentine figure concealed by the shadows. Once, she had been a powerful figure in Noxus. Assassins killed at her slightest whim. Soldiers spilled their darkest secrets, and generals willingly followed her counsel in the hopes of patronage. Cassiopeia sighed these days. She emerged only under cover of night. No longer was she an influential voice in Noxian society, not since she had been reduced to this grotesque abomination in hiding. Upon her return from the desert, Cassiopeia had hidden in the crypt of her family's residence, fearful of her transformation. She remained alone in the dark, dank vault for weeks. Eventually, a growing desire to hunt overwhelmed her, and she ventured out to roam the city by night as the household slumbered. Cassiopeia put aside her reverie as a broad-shouldered soldier in a leather breastplate stumbled from a tavern, drink in hand. Finally, this was the man she'd been waiting for. She trailed his movements from above. following him silently over fortress walls and archways until he entered an empty courtyard. Perfect. Cassiopeia slithered onto an adjacent roof, eyes glinting with predatory thrill. Her figure cast a shadow across the soldier. The man turned, drunkenly defiant. Cassiopeia's tail twitched in anticipation. Her forked tongue extended, tasting the air. She drew the sweet scent of his blood into her lungs, then exhaled with great satisfaction. The man tried to threaten Cassio, but his words just angered her, responding to him with an angry hiss. By the time the soldier looked up, she'd slid to the opposite side of the courtyard and perched directly above him, remaining out of sight in the shadows. The man panicked as he failed to locate Cassio's position. Breathless, he edged away, looking for an escape. He hammered his fists against every door, but each was bolted shut. Cassiopeia imagined his mind racing to solve the riddle of who was hunting him and why. The man unsheathed his sword, turning on the spot, unsure where to direct his threat. Cassio spat a bilious wad of venom as he turned toward the sound of her voice. The man howled in pain, coin-sized holes burning through his armor and into his skin. She inhaled the satisfying sear of burning leather and flesh. The man brandished his sword, asking who the serpent is and why is she hunting him. Cassio replied that she had been watching him, aware of what the man did in the dark. The man was furious, stating that whatever he did was none of Cassio's business. Cassio then responded, telling the man that she knew he was murdering children for drake meat. The man tried to pry open the shutters of a nearby window with the flat of his sword, but they too were bolted shut. Cassio then continued to tell all of the information she gathered. There were the 3 tavern wenches, Sarmella, Elmin, and Lykes. They were found in the river yesterday. Their faces were hardly recognizable, and it was because of the man. Cassio relished the thought of sinking her talons into his flesh. The man readied his stance and demanded Cassio to show herself. Cassio agreed and slithered down to the courtyard and rose to her full height. The man's eyes widened in horror, his hands trembling. Cassiopeia stood head and shoulders over the man, glaring down with narrowing eyes. The man cried, screaming that there was a monster in front of him. Cassio murmured the man's words, but then she claimed that calling her a monster was not the worst that she had been called. Cassio slid left and whipped her tail across his legs, effortlessly knocking him to the ground. Curling her tail around his chest, she squeezed his ribcage tighter and tighter, sensing his pounding heart straining beneath her grasp. Cassio heard bones crack. That's why she resisted the urge to break him completely and released her grip. The man crawled to his sword, grasping it in desperation. But this just gave more entertainment for Cassio. She enjoyed watching him tremble. Cassio circled him slowly, and that's when the man met her gaze and stared in slow recognition. The man finally recognized her and called her the Lady Cassiopeia. His reaction caught Cassio off guard, allowing the man to push himself onto his feet with his sword and create more distance between them. The man questioned why Cassio chased drunkards like him through the filthy gutters of this city. Now, as he spat a wad of blood, he then mocked Cassio for falling such great heights from a noble status now into a monster lurking in the shadows. Cassiopeia's gaze bored into the man's eyes, locking them in a cold-hearted bond. She screamed, pouring all her rage into the cry, fury at the unfairness of her current state, anger at the loss of her privileged life, resentment for her failed ambitions. she channeled it all into the screeching, mind-shredding wail. As she screamed, her fury was replaced with joy. It felt like she was floating. Her potential for greatness was infinite, discovering that she wields a strong power despite her new form. Every fiber of her being sang with ancient power. Searing emerald light blazed from Cassiopeia's eyes. The man's final panic was outlined in silhouette as he was petrified from the inside out. His stare hardened, grayed, and stiffened. His last cry of terror stifled as her curse transformed his flesh to stone. Cassiopeia slithered up to the statue and softly caressed its hard cheek. What was once skin fractured into a grisly pattern resembling a dried riverbed. Once, Cassiopeia had to manipulate, bribe, or otherwise persuade people to orchestrate her schemes. But now, Cassio realized that she could simply take what she wanted. She whipped her tail forward, smashing the statue to the ground. Cassio then smiled, eyes glinting, as the statue was shattered into 1,000 pieces of rubble and dust. Cassiopeia flushed with pride as she considered her handiwork. Her life as a noble was over, yes, but never had she felt such boundless power coursing through her veins. She slithered back onto the rooftops, her mind awhirl with ideas. Her next victim would offer her a far greater challenge. In her old life, Cassiopeia was a treacherous, manipulative schemer who took any opportunity she could to further her goals. She also has an individualistic philosophy, seeing others as tools to exploit, something she learned from her mother. After transforming into her cursed form, she initially felt disgusted towards her new body and despair from losing her old life as a noble. But she embraced her new form as a way to enact her goals herself. Though Cassiopeia's new capabilities have made her sadistic and predatory, she still has moral standards and prefers to hunt those more evil than herself, such as when she admonished and killed a Noxian soldier who committed inhumane crimes. Do you think Cassio would still have a place in the Black Rose, or her new powers would lead her to something better? The answers are still unknown, as Cassio slithers in the darkness.